I know, and I've seen it before. Oh, really? Oh, I wish. Those three were here. Really? Well, if Robert, he's there. My cousin. Yeah, we got that. I just want to make sure. All right, how's it All right.
Get to stay out front. I love it. I need someone to keep me Nothing ever worked like that for me.
Good morning.
Good morning. Well, I told her I'll be back.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We're going to get this panel discussion started. We'll have a microphone up here, and then someone will have one if you have any questions. Hard to hear from the back to the front, so we'll pass this around. But before we get started, we're honored to have former Governor Jim Tucker here. He wanted to come by and say hello to everybody, and I asked him to give a short talk this morning. He has to leave. He's going to San Jose. Those of you where are you going?
Next week.
Next week. So if you find him over there, buy him lunch. Feed him some manju. I've been looking for some good manju. He wanted to come here and say hello, and Jim Guy was our congressman back in '87, back then, and then he was our lieutenant governor. Bill Clinton was our governor, and when Bill Clinton stepped down and run for president, Jim Guy became the governor and did a great job, and he got elected also. So he did a good job. No, he did. But anyway, Jim Guy and I was going to school in Scott, Arkansas, and I transferred my 8th grade to Forest Heights, which is a school in West Little Rock. Now, coming from the country, probably the poorest school in Scott, probably the poorest region in the state. And then when I transferred to Forest Heights, I didn't know really anything about Forest Heights. I was at school in Little Rock, and I wanted to play basketball, so I transferred to Forest Heights and found out all the rich people went there. I was kind of like a possum at a junior league ball going over there. So the first guy I met was Jim Guy Tucker, and they said, we got to go to the meeting this morning in the gym. I said, what for? I said, they're having an oratorical contest. And I said, I've never heard that. Being from Scott, I've never heard that word before. I said, what is that? I said, oh, it's some kind of speech contest, and we got to go listen to it. So 3 or 4 guys talked, and Jim Guy happened to be one of the speakers, and he won it though. So, well, I knew he was going a long way from that point on, even though I couldn't spell the word oratorio. and he has. Now, he's been a very successful businessman. He's got business in Indonesia and China and everywhere else. So he's done a lot of good things, and I'm proud to call him a friend, and he wanted to stop by and say hi. So I'm going to turn this over to Jerome.
Thank you very much. I probably won that oratorical contest because I was a lot shorter than everybody else was faster. I want to welcome you here. Richard and I have been friends since junior high school, and he called me back in 1992 when you had your first reunion of this group, and I'm over at the Excelsior Hotel, and I met with a lot of you at that time, and it was a magnificent thing. Having been born during World War II and grown up with all that was going on, and you'll remember what the movies were like and what all the attitudes were like. We were a nation at war, and it was a horrible thing to have happening, but only when I went to visit Rohwer for the first time, back when I was first in politics in the early 70s, did I truly get the impact. The impact of war was that there was almost nothing there. Just a shred to remind you of the events that had led to families being torn apart, carried across the country, put in a confined camp there, and many of them going off to war. It was extraordinarily moving sitting in that empty field and trying to get your mind around the fact that all of these families were there from all over the country, particularly the West Coast, and that it was a major impact on their life. Their homes were lost, resold to others many times. You know the story. But it affected me very, very deeply. It had taken until that moment in time. Interestingly, when I met Richard, and there were a couple of other folks from Japan who had been raised in the United States and went to school with me. But it was really the first person I met who'd been one of the camps. And he never talked about it. He was just another student there at school. And yes, he happened to be Japanese, but unlike the African American students who were going to school, he was generally, I hope, very welcomed everywhere. No one gave it much thought. But we have not solved our racial problem to this day. And it's a heartbreaker to know that events such as Rohwer is an indicator, though, of how fearful people are about religions that are different, skin colors that are different, cultures that are different. So I'm very grateful for you all coming to Arkansas, knowing so many of you and your families had gone through that entire process. In 1964, I headed to Vietnam, and I stopped on the way in Yokohama and got off the boat and went into Yokohama. That's 1964, and it was a shred itself, except in this case, shreds of buildings that had been blown down and were still stacked all over the city. It was wreckage from one side of the city to the other, late in 1964. I went over to Busan, Korea from there, and saw the same sort of remains of the war. And I went from Vietnam to Vietnam from there in 1965 and 67 and saw it there. And as I had traveled in the intervening years around the world, in Israel, Lebanon, Iraq, I had seen the same god-awful thing over. So the fact that you can come together and form memories and inform your children and grandchildren about what you've been through, what caused you, and help guide them in the future is a marvelous thing. And I thank you very much for coming to our state to do that. I hope you have a wonderful time here and a wonderful trip back home. Thank you so much.
So, does anyone have any, well, actually, Richard, you should introduce your, sorry, you should introduce your fellow panelists.
My fellow panelists.
Yeah.
Come out. Okay. I have with, up here, it's not my panel.
I feel like it's
Martin Gibson, he's on the, he was on the documentary. He's lived in Arkansas all his life, and he was in school when all of us, well, I was too young, but Rose and Ethel showed up at school, and Martin was there to greet him, and he has a little piece of the documentary, and his name is Martin Gibson, and he's been a good friend of the family for forever, I guess, as long as I can remember. And also there's Rose Fudamachi Sasaki. She and then her sister Ethel Toda. They were one of the families that stayed in Arkansas after the camp closed, and I think there were 5 or 6 families that moved to Scott to farm together. So her dad was a farmer in Terminus, and he and my father and Mr. Yoshimura, I think they all 3 were farmers, and then the Shingus and the Nakamuras. I think Mr. Shingu had a master's degree from USC, and he couldn't go back to California or find a job in California. He used to be a principal at school. Mr. Nakamura was also principal of the school. Had no knowledge about farming, but with the help of the other 3, they stayed and farmed for several years before they moved back to California. So Rose and Ethel were young enough to remember a whole lot more than me. I was only about 3 years old when I was at camp, so some of the hard questions we'll turn it over to them. Think of some good ones, and we have a mic. Rico has the microphone, so if you have any questions, we'd like to answer them.
no question. I don't believe that. Somebody's got a question.
Quick question, what was the normal day like?
Did you guys hear him?
Normal day in camp.
Normal day
Normal day at the camp.
in the camp.
You know what you did all day after school or weekend.
Kids, just hold this.
Yeah, just don't get it close. So.
Well, I was from 4th grade to 6th grade in camp, and we had lots of friends. We had lots of fun. I'm sure my parents had a lot of trauma. But
What was the meals like? Did you have to wait in line to go eat every
yes,
meal?
the meals. We had a mess hall.
Get it
that,
closer.
we went to, and we lined up for the food. And, well, I didn't eat. I didn't eat much. I don't remember what we had. My mother would bring some tray of food home to the apartment so we can eat at home. Yeah,
With
but we had regular schools, and I think most of you know that there were Buddhist churches and Christian churches, and life was pretty normal, except that the jobs were very scarce, I guess, for the adults, and they were paid $16 a month to work if they got a job, and we made a lot of friends because our neighbors were just right next door, and life was pretty fun for us because we were young, and we didn't know all the bad experiences that our parents had gone through, and they had to give us so much to get into the camps. And my father was employed with Atkins Crow, and he was manager for this 1,400-acre farm near Terminus, and he could not go back after the war was over since somebody else had taken over his job. And so he decided to look around Arkansas, Louisiana, Oklahoma to see where he could farm around near the camp. And we finally settled in Scott, Arkansas, where this Mr. Alexander and Mrs. Brown.
I was going to start ducking. I thought bullets were flying.
Yeah.
It might be better.
So anyway, we packed up a truck and came back to Scott, and I remember passing by all these houses with white picket fences and asking my father, is that the house we're gonna live in? And he wouldn't say anything. And then we'll pass another house with a white picket fence. Is that the house? And no. And we finally ended up, temporarily, we had to live in a slave house. It was a three-room slave house with an outhouse, no running water. And when we arrived, my grandfather had gotten there earlier. He was pumping the water to wash the rice. And we were so excited to pump the water because that was a new experience for us. And as kids, I guess, it didn't bother us that we didn't have running water for a while. And then in 3 months, we moved to another house, which had better amenities, and we still didn't have electricity, but there was a lake behind our house where we had a lot of fun, learned to swim, and I think they were deciding.
It's on Old River.
I think what was that?
I was asking him the lake. It was Old River.
Old River.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
Old River Lake is a lake in Scott that years ago was part.
Old River Lake in Scott was part of the Arkansas River until something like 1844 when it separated, and it became a major recreational area after that. And all of us kids just went swimming there because that's just what it was for. Also, it was good fishing, but you had to make sure that you didn't make some crappie fisherman unhappy, but you out there flogging around where he thought it was
Fishing with yeah, we went swimming with the snakes and snapping turtles and all. We didn't care. But also, when we started school, they didn't know whether to send us to the black school or the white school, and we definitely didn't want to go to the black school at that time. I don't think their system was equal, and so the landlady, she vouched for us that if we got into any trouble, that she would hear about it. And so we were accepted into Scott High School, where we met Martin, was one of the students there. And what did you think about us?
Well, it was kind of interesting because, I'm in the first grade. There's 47 kids in my first grade class, and
And the question that came up yesterday, well, Martin, were you on the very front row? Yes, ma'am, I was. Well, why was I on the front row? Because I'd acted up. So all of a sudden, there's this commotion out in the office was here, and right next to it was first grade. And so there's this commotion outside. Well, you know what 47 little kids are going to do? They're going to run to the window and see what's going on. Well, what was going on was the Japanese that were coming in to go to school with us. And so my sister's here somewhere. Rose went into her class. Kenji, who just retired as a pharmacist in San Diego, went into my class. And Kenji called me back, I guess about a year ago, and he said, Martin, this is Kenji. Do you remember me? I said, Kenji, that scrawny little Japanese kid that showed up in the first grade. We already had 47 kids, and we had to find a desk for you. I remember you. But you know, and as I've talked to other, and I've gotten kind of involved to a degree, but as I've talked to the other ones that have gone to school across the country, rarely did they get the treatment that the kids got at Scott. They came in as normal students. The bad part is they started making better grades than the rest of us did. Made it difficult. Number two, they were better softball players than we were. So we didn't get to play on the softball team. Now the next thing, they were basketball players, and we couldn't play because they were better than us. But I'm very proud of how our community of Scott accepted them, and they accepted us. And it has gone on for many years. I'm so glad they come back. I laugh, but my sister's back there somewhere, and her and Rose were together, and we're looking at pictures of them in the 6th, 7th, 8th grade. And what happened to all of the dark hair? Well, it's gone. Well, they asked me what happened to the hair. Well, it's all gone too. But I think when we look back at it, and the Yadas stayed, and actually, I wrote that my senior year in school, I went to Central. Bob, his brother, dropped him off at Forest Heights, and Bob went on to LRU. But we got to know each other, and we got to know each other well. And I've always complained to Richard every time I think about it. Richard, why aren't you growing tomatoes? Your father had the best tomatoes ever, and you won't even go farming anymore. And I don't understand that. Sure, he had a little different career, but he could have kept a patch of tomatoes out there somewhere. But Scott, when they came to Scott, Miss Virginia Alexander brought them. If Miss Virginia had said they're going to be here and you're going to like it, and the answer is always yes, ma'am, because she really believed that what she was doing was right, and the community accepted them very well.
So we're actually out of time. I should have allotted more time for questions, but Ethel and Rose are part of the pilgrimage, so they will be here the whole time, right? And then, I don't know, Richard would probably see you in the key, right?
Yeah, I got an activity Saturday morning, but I'm going to go to Rosalie's house and try to get her to come over for dinner
At Hoots?
Hoots, and she'll be glad to see everybody. She's looking forward to it. So if she's feeling well, we'll take her over there.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah. Okay, well, let's give them all a round of applause. Thank you so much.
One thing, tomorrow night at the Butler Center, they normally don't do this, but for your group, for this group, they have a special exhibit set up, some of the Rosalie Gould collection that some of you may not see, so there's good places to eat over there. I think you get dinner on your own, so it might be a good place to go and look at that exhibit that's specially set up for this group. So
right, I think it's on the second floor, they said. Yeah, that's tonight from 6 to 8.
Yeah, it is tonight.
It is tonight. Yep, Friday. It is Friday, right? Okay, well, let's give them another round of applause. Thank you. Okay, we'll just take a really quick 5-minute break, and then we're going to be back in this room for Chicago resettlement. And I believe that Brian Mia of Dencho is at the same time doing resettlement back to the West Coast. I know you have to decide which resettlements you want to see, but as I said before, we are live streaming these sessions. So if you miss one because you're in the other one, you can go to the Facebook group and watch the video there. So you can do that, when you get home. Okay, so 5 minutes, really quick one.